All right, so picture this, right? The Pentagon press room, right? Half empty, no Reuters, no BBC, not even Fox. They're replaced by vloggers, people that record their videos like me right now with a ring light. Um, Basically outlets that kind of perform transparency but not really living it. That's the world we live in right now. That's a world that kind of like relies on professionalism, air quotes incoming. I hate it. Professionalism now kind of means obedience, because if you don't obey, you're not professional. As if you sign the loyalty oath, you get your backstage pass to democracy. Otherwise, you can watch from the sidelines. So we're not really, it's not censorship, it's control. It's control through design, and that might even be worse. Saudi Cup and welcome to another episode here for the Funky Pod, Mindful Media and Communication. I hesitate with the intro today because mindful, not sure how mindful the communication in and around the White House is these days, but hey, let's discuss. For the longest time, you would have thought that access to, in this case, the White House, like the Pentagon, okay, the access would kind of equal freedom, right? Because you see what's happening and you can report what's happening. Now, with the latest shift, it looks like it's not the case anymore. Access doesn't equal freedom. You only get access if you give away your freedom. Because now it's participation based on a script. You can only participate if you follow this. So they didn't ban journalists, of course, not that's in 1930 something anymore, says the German. But they did change the casting call, right? That's obvious. And there's this thing that we have like in communication studies where we talk about like influencers. So we didn't start talking about influencers, but influencers fit in there, which is like a term that we call proximity fetish. Okay, so and you do anything to be close to power, basically. And that's what we're seeing right now, right? So those outlets with 3 followers more than the podcast you're listening to / watching right now, they're getting access because, well, they're like, okay, if I can get access, then of course I can hopefully have a bigger audience because I can get all the insights. And so I don't care about whatever I have to say. So I should say it's not censorship, but it's basically censorship with better lighting, right? That's exactly what it is. And it's censorship in a smart way. And there are a few media theories that we have here. One being the old school theory in media studies, actually Marshall McLuhan, we talked about it so many times before, right? He said the medium is the message. And I mean, that applies also here. So it's not just about what you send, but also which medium you are using to send the information. And in this very case right now, if you can only find the information on that My Pillow Dude's TV channel, for example, then I mean, that does influence how you, by the way, also how the rest of the world understands the messages that are being sent. Okay, so that's the medium is the message for you, right? So the medium that you use to send the message influences the way people understand the message. And in this case, right-wing bloggers, do I say it? Turning Point is also not much better because they're one of the new ones too, right? Turning Point USA's TV channel, the My Pillow dude, and whoever else is in there, right? It does influence how an audience will interpret that message. And for the intended target audience, that might be okay. For the secondary, tertiary, and so on target audiences that are not your primary audience, that are not as pro you as you might want them to be, that might have completely different impacts. But I'm sure the White House PR team thought about it because they're professionals. So just thinking out loud right now. And another thing I just mentioned in the intro, right? That controlling is kind of more important than actually censoring. So we call like control as design, or control via design if you want to. Because space basically decides who gets to speak, who's spoken to, and who gets seen. So if you're not in the room, you can ask questions. If you're not in the room, it's much harder for you to report on something, to understand something, to know who said what and when. And if you're not in a room, who gets to see you? And there are another like million media theories that we could apply here. I'll stick with the most famous ones for now, the most common ones. There's Foucault, for example, who talks about architecture as discipline, like architecture of power, for example. Like Foucault is always about power and messaging and communication. And so you architecture the way communication flows, for example. It also indicates who's got more power, right? Who's got more to say, who's got more information. And so if now the snowflake mainstream media doesn't have a seat at the table anymore in the Pentagon, then they don't know. They have to wait until things come out. So others that are sitting at a table, they got first-hand access. So they have more power in this regard. Yeah, so you architecture the way communication flows. And by architecturing the way communication flows, you can control the narrative. And that's exactly what is happening. We also talked a lot about our Guy Debord, right? Society of the Spectacle. We had it many times, but it's just so... In 2025, this seems like one of the most fitting theories ever possible, okay? Because we see right now that clearly the audience prefers spectacle over substance. We want to see drama. We want to see like quick takes. We want to see hot takes, outtakes, 30-second clips. Who wants to listen to like someone really breaking down the latest Pentagon, whatever decisions they made, bilateral relationships between different nations? Who really cares? We just want, oh, they suck. Oh, we're the good ones. They're the bad ones. Let's bomb the shit out of them. That's what we want, right? So the Society of the Spectacle prefers spectacle over substance, and kicking out or making it harder, they didn't kick them out, making it harder for the snowflakey left-wing mainstream media and Fox News to actually be there and maybe try to be... So I'm defending Fox News and maybe and BBC and The Guardian, they're not much better, right? But this old school media, making it harder for them to write like maybe detailed pieces about something, and rather have those vloggers in there with their ring lights and creating 30-second clips, shows you that even the people in charge rather produce spectacle than in-depth, detailed content. They want spectacle to get out. They don't want any detailed write-ups to get out, for example. And yeah, right now what you can say is like it's freedom of the press, because that's been like the mantle of democracy, right, for the longest time. Freedom of the press is brought to you by event management, right? Because that's the White House press secretary. It's not a press secretary anymore. It's like an event management thing right now. Right? Like, okay, you sit here, you put your ring light up there, you're gonna sit there, we have the lighting there, you have the spectrum over here. Yeah, by now the press room is like fluorescent lights and zero friction. And it used to be the other way around. News used to look terrible, but they brought the friction, and that was what news were about. Now communication journalism prof coming through. I remember the good old days. Journalism, right? If you look up the definition for journalism, it says the watchdog of the society. The watchdog holding the mirror up to society, politicians, showing everybody what's happening, what's up, not putting a ring light around it and make it look pretty. This is not what journalism was supposed to be. Right now I have this feeling of like, in Star Wars, when Anakin turns to the bad side, to the dark side, I'm like, no, you're supposed to be the one to save us. And you're the one that's betraying us. I'm not frustrated, you're frustrated. So let's discuss what I just mentioned, right, with the friction. Because right now, again, it used to be like, okay, you're a journalist, I know you have to ask the hard questions. Right now, if a journalist asks hard questions, it's like, you're unprofessional. Why would you criticize the president? Why would you do that? The president knows what he's doing. Why would you criticize them? Yeah, friction now is seen as unprofessional. It used to be like, wow, you asked the good questions. Now it's like, how dare you ask difficult questions? So if you're a disruptive reporter right now, it's basically career suicide, because you're gonna get kicked out, you don't have access anymore. Insane. So it used to be that like this adversarial relationship was actually something that everybody would appreciate. Politicians would seem to appreciate it, even though it's annoying. They would be like, okay, you're keeping me on my toes, I have to be smart about it, and I have to like have answers for me, and you're asking me. Now it's all about symbiotic relationships, like I help you, you help me, we're a happy family. Who's not part of the happy family? Normal people. We are not part of the happy family. And that's a problem, okay? And that's where our good friend, Theory 30 Seconds, Jürgen Habermas comes in, right? Habermas talked about the public sphere. We talked about the theory 1,000 times on this podcast because they're destroying the public sphere. The public sphere, right? Supposed to be, back in the day, open space in whatever park you're at, right? Oh, sorry, there's no park left in the White House, so you don't know what I'm talking about. So imagine, back in the day, there were parks and people would discuss politics there. Fast forward in the good old internet days, you have the public sphere online, forums, you discuss things, social media, you discuss things. 2025, the public sphere is being compressed to like smaller and smaller places, even online, and walls are built around it so that nothing spills out of it. It's annoying. And even like the press room, who used to be a public sphere, kind of a representation of the public sphere where journalists would ask questions that the public would want to know, is now just a live feed of like complimenting and blowing smoke up each other's butt. Yeah, we're now at a point where power doesn't fear the press anymore. It hires the press as freelancers. That's where we're at in 2025. And this is not North Korea. So to bring it back to the theory part, to also, have my Professor Hart be like, okay, at least I tried to teach something today. So let's bring it back to what we just discussed. Habermas, right? Public sphere, the board, society of the spectacle, the feed, right? Okay. There's like a meeting of two ghosts. Maybe I'm Italian, that's why I'm so spiritual. A meeting of two ghosts. It's the rational debate versus the spectacle, right? And we used to pay attention to the rational debate because that's where actual context would come from. That's what would matter. Now it seems like the spectacle, as mentioned before, takes over and no one really cares about the rational debate anymore. And the thing is, your feed, our feed, kind of like fuses both together. But it does it in a way that it looks like hey, it looks democratic because we can decide what we watch, but the algorithm clearly prefers spectacle over rational debates. So while it feels democratic, like I can choose what I'm tuning into, but can you choose what's being shown to you? That's the question. Visibility is the new evidence. Like, look, people watching it, because they're not getting shown anything else. So is it really democratic if there's no other choices that are being shown to you? The brighter the lights, the duller the truth. And I think that's something that we will have to cope with for quite a while, to be honest. Now, I'm complaining about this all the time. So obviously, I'm also trying to do something about it, right? Because there's this sacred rule that I have. You can only whine about stuff if you try to do something about it. If you're not trying to do something, if you're not trying to change something, shut up. Then you can whine. Okay, so what I'm trying to do right now is looking into how institutions are not defending truth anymore. They're just patching it, right? And patching it together so that it fits them. And democracies are running like constant, I want to call it firmware updates, right? Just like making it here. That's what people looking at right now. Let's fix this for a second. But there are no overhauls right now. So I'm writing a book right now called Reality in Beta. Follow at Reality in Beta or realityinbeta.com. You get like first insights. And I suggest like a framework. Call it frame, because otherwise, attention deficit and stuff like this. So there are some triggers that we can see in regards to how people interact with content. So when it comes to framing, for example, right? So as someone who wants to control the narratives, you put a frame around an issue, for example, around something that you're showing to the world. And then you only refer to the people, the things that happen inside that frame. Everything else you ignore. Leads to a few things. A, you blend out all the noise from the outside. You don't care what other people say. Plus, it adds to everybody who wants to be in the frame. They're like, hey, don't ignore me. Let me come in the frame. And you decide how they get into the frame. Okay? Representation. We used to look for like representation for everybody. Now, we're focusing on mirroring power, not the public. So we try to be like the people in power. We don't try to represent the public inside the power structure. When we look at algorithmic mediation, we look at like, how does the algorithm work? The algorithm also follows those compliance trends. If they don't want this out there, they're going to hate on me, says Mark. Well, let's tune the algorithm so that it fits those guys in charge. So they like us again. Thank you for inviting us to your new amazing best ballroom ever. Dramatic pause here now, because the last point in the framework that I'm trying to develop is ethics. Heard of that before? And highly ignored these days, ethics, because we don't care if someone's ethical. We care about if it looks accountable, and that's all that matters right now. Now I sound like Alex Jones almost. They don't want to be accountable. They just want to look accountable. Gave rocks. But you know what I'm saying, right? We had like, even my category is exactly spooky. Exactly. We are now I unplugged the microphone. We are now in my book is called Reality in Beta, but I think we are in democracy in Beta. Like with like more authenticity filters. Like, hey, add some authenticity here, add some authenticity there. I'm so cool. Woo! That's all we're getting right now. And so to bring things to an end of this, it's not a rant, maybe it's a little rant. But right now we're at a stage where being seen is more important than being right. And governments, and it's smart, they gamify accountability. And how, like, they're adding this transparency as control mechanism to it, right? What we discussed in the beginning. So I'm hesitating again because I'm like, should I say? I know I have like a quick note here where I said like professionals of exposure, truth to lighting. And I was like, this sounds like lots of hate, but no, I stick with it. I stick with it because I think that's exactly where we're at right now, unfortunately. And I think it's gonna be hard to find a way back. Because the way back is gonna be, cliches here, a very lonely road, and maybe not a very like, convenient one, unfortunately. So transparency to me is the new censorship, just with a prettier smile. Like transparency as a control mechanism, that is. Since I already dropped one Star Wars reference, right, Spooky? That's my cat agreeing with me. I'm adjust the second one. Democracy doesn't die in darkness. Democracy dies under fluorescent lights right in front of our eyes. And the live stream replaced truth. And when access requires obedience, then journalism turns decorative. And it's all just a spectacle. So maybe the bravest act left in the media right now is actually refusing to stay on camera.